Also, Arcane Season 2, I haven't watched it. I don't want to hear anything. I'm waiting for all the episodes to come out so that I can watch it all in one sitting. I have heard a lot of good things about it, which I'm hoping they stand up. There's no way I'm going to sit there, watch 3 episodes to one of the greatest TV shows of our time, and then have to wait till the next week.
How long were you sidled up with that shifty, self-serving war pig? She oinked poison in your ear and you just ate it.
Nah, man. Nah, man.
Season 1 ended off with a hell of a cliffhanger. Powder embraced the Jinx name after the death of her surrogate father and debatably best character, Silco, completed her Hextech rocket launcher, and sent a blast headed straight for the Council, right as they were brokering a peace treaty with Zaun. Upon the announcement of the second season being the closing chapter, I geared myself up for the possible deaths of core characters, with Jayce being the only one I knew was guaranteed to live. This then leads us into my first point. Although I like the editing, score, and sound design used to convey how serious the incident was, looking back at it now, the impact didn't hit as hard as it should have. Now that might have been due to my high expectations, but with this season being announced as the finale, I expected either Victor or Mel to die to establish from the get-go that punches weren't being pulled. Sure, it's a concerning scenario in-universe as half the council died, but realistically speaking, the only one anyone marginally cared for was Caitlyn's mom, as the rest barely had enough screen time for any attachment to develop. So in turn, the gravity of Jinx's attack wasn't fully realized, and it made what was considered to be a jaw-dropping cliffhanger feel like it never mattered, or at least matter much. Of course, this is small potatoes compared to the rougher cuts of meat, but I'm mentioning this now because omitting or weakening what was built up in the previous season becomes a repeated offense, exponentially dealing more damage to plot lines and characters as the story goes on, as if the writers are trying their hardest to separate this season from what came before it. Allow me to demonstrate. I'm not going to spend too much time setting aside entire segments to talk about plot points because that will require either multiple hours or separate parts, but I will use the time I have in this video to grab whatever's needed for context in order to get into the blatant throwing away of Arcane's strongest suit, the character development, starting with Caitlyn Kierman.
Ekko, it's wrong what's been done to you. You'd be well within your rights to keep it. I couldn't blame you, but if you do, this cycle of violence will never stop. This is our best shot at setting the record straight. This city needs healing, more than I ever realized. Please, let me help you.
A pompous, eager sharpshooter forced to holster a weapon by her parents to keep her away from danger. In her investigation to find the culprit behind the corruption in Piltover and her bond with Vi, her preconceived notions about the Undercity gets whittled down as she learns little by little that the Zaunites aren't all monsters begging for apocalypse. She comes to realize the trauma and suffering these people go through, suffocating in the chokehold that is Shimmer, left scraping together coins to survive. What that clip showed was the result of her trials, the next Piltover-born citizen after Grayson to take action to stop the violence, and show the world that Zaun is more than a slumhouse for degenerates, before walking into an inevitable betrayal. Her newfound beliefs and motivations would then be challenged, as after being kidnapped she watched in horror, Jinx's war cry barreling towards those she held dear, a war cry that could have been silenced had she pulled the trigger. The guilt and remorse stemming from the death of her mother were a breeding ground for the next progression of her character, doubly so considering that she was next in line to take up the Kierman name. Would she stick to what she's learned, or lose herself searching for a way to fill the Cassandra-sized hole in her heart under the veil that she's protecting Piltover from a Zaunite revolution?
Kate, I can't wear this. I watched them kill my parents. Do you have any idea how that feels?
Yes, I do. I thought you were on our side.
What?
I thought you were on our side.
Sorry, I just had to play it twice to make sure I'm not imagining it. Do I have to spell it out? Kate knows firsthand that Vi's parents were killed by enforcers.
What, you don't have parents?
No, they were killed by enforcers.
She's been shown later in the first season that she's a lot slower to jumping to conclusions, and tries her best to look at the situation from everyone else's shoes. Yet without Jayce's go-ahead and a firm assessment of her own emotional state, she agreed to send all enforcers to Zaun and thought that Vi would jump for Jesus after being asked to wear a badge that's no doubt been etched into her mind as a trigger. Did we not spend like 2 episodes grasping both in conversation and actions the consequences of what sending enforcers to smoke out the big bad would do? The second Jayce did as little as hint at the storming of Zaun, she was shocked at the sight and argued against him, yet there's not even a protest at Season 2's first council meeting discussing this? I get her mother died and all, but are we really supposed to just sit here and buy that she'd throw away the chance at the peace she almost lost her life to bring mere days after the incident? Just like that, she's ready to risk the lives of the good people she mentioned in her argument against the storming? No build-up or conversations leading up to this? No time to let the idea at least marinate and stew along with her grief?
I want to tear that laugh from her throat forever.
That a good enough answer? Yeah, they really try to hammer home that Kate's on a downward spiral. She's going on a dark path of hatred and revenge, and it's gonna push away everyone she loves, and blah blah blah. I'm not saying it shouldn't have been an avenue for her character to go down, but they could have shown her slipping instead of insta-queuing her into the textbook scary revenge is bad example in the first episode. All the time that the previous season spent building Caitlyn's character was undone in 5 minutes, with the rest of it putting her further and further into the ground, making her do and say explosive things to sell Darkside Kate to viewers as quickly as possible. But Dara, her mother's death and the attack at the memorial could drive anybody to go down the path she does. Seems like a good progression of her character to me. She even pulls back the Enforcer invasion and worked it down to a small task force, only meant to hunt down Jinx and stop the production of Shimmer, so it still prevents a war from starting.
Your smeeches, man.
Was. Not anymore. Ow! Sorry. It's the gray. It gives me that.
Tell us how you wound up here.
Hey, wait. Jinx is off the rails. She was headed towards the old tunnels. Something about rerouting the fence.
This is it then. Cuff him.
I told you everything I know.
You're a confessed criminal. You'll spend your retirement in a cell.
I think we should cut the others loose.
Wild, the kind of crap people get up to when you choke them out.
We use the Grey to clear the streets, to keep people safe.
For someone who still wants peace and to deal with Jinx and Shimmer quietly, she makes a hell of a lot of noise. But you know what? Let's say you're right. Well, after the 3rd episode, she doesn't do much outside of whispering vicious nothings until episode 6, where she switched right back to regular Kate because Vi told her that the bloodthirsty murderous beast that she and Ambessa were sent to take care of was her father. Again, just like that. You can't make this up. So all the revenging she did in the first 3 episodes, regardless of how well it was written, which it wasn't, didn't even matter in the end anyway. So what the heck was the point? You basically made her retread her season 1 arc, but without literally everything that made that arc engaging. You took manipulative shortcuts and headed straight for the destination with no regard for the journey, expecting to gain the same reward. Sorry, hacks, but we're not letting you off that easily. Because the fans already did. So that's Caitlyn ruined, but what about the oil to her water? Well, she also was ruined, but instead of being shredded apart in a blender, Vi's complexity was simply tossed aside and left her being nothing but a prop. A prop for what, you ask? Well, let's get into her aforementioned complexity problem first. Vi seemed to be a simple character. A girl who would do all that she could to bring those she loved a life better than the Lanes. The one to make sure that her sister Powder acknowledges her strengths and got on the right track, never backing down without a fight. And that she didn't. She fought off Silco's goons to buy time for Vander's escape. All seemed well. The chains were lifted, the wall was broken down, and freedom was within grasp. Clagger just had to jinx it, didn't he? In a shocking turn of events, one of the best I've seen in a long time, only Vi came out of the rubble alive. And if losing her family wasn't already bad enough, the culprit was the one she protected the most. In a fit of regretful rage, she separated herself from the only family she had left and lost the opportunity to make things right. Years and years went by, and she reappears, hardened, restless, heartbroken. Now given the freedom Vander deserved, and rejuvenated with the hope that she can get back to the sister she wronged, she plowed through the lanes, learning about things bigger than her journey along the way, but never losing sight of her destination. And through all the traitors she fought and the knockouts she endured, she finally had the chance to reunite with Powder, only to find out that she might have been too late. Kidnapped by Jinx after a hard-fought rematch with Savika, she uses this situation as a chance to bring her sister back once and for all, to chase away the monster sitting across from her. But Powder lost control. Vi then had to witness the monster she created, finally absolved of all doubt on who she is, jinx the safety of Piltover and Zaun for the foreseeable future. It's needless to say that Vi's development in this next season is top 3 most imperative. The sister she desperately wanted to reconnect with has been snuffed out, morphing into a full-on villain. A villain that started what Vander almost sacrificed himself to prevent by killing half the council, with one of them possibly being her girlfriend's best friend and mother. Her father figure is being reanimated into a bloodlusting, murderous heap of horror. Keeping in line with her lore, she will eventually have to become a part of the unit that caused her parents' deaths. If anyone was to be the main focus of the story now, it's her. Too bad the writers didn't think so. Ironically enough, Vi became one of the most non-essential characters in record time. She says little to nothing in the episodes that she's in. The conversations that should have been had, not only with Caitlyn and Jayce, but with herself through Vander's voice, don't occur despite all that's just happened. She pretty much serves to help the audience understand the gravity of Caitlyn's downward spiral, and that's it. She's nowhere to be found in episode 4, and when she goths out in episode 5, she loses an easy fight to Jinx, doesn't reappear until the second half of the episode, says nothing about Vander's letter to Silco, and loses to Warwick. Episode 6 gave her a lot more screen time, but whenever she had a conversation that could go deeper into her relationship with Jinx, it either cuts away to something else or the conversation just ends there. Other than that, she got thrown to the ground by Kate, sorta kinda made up a plan that shouldn't have worked, gets her ass beat for the 50th time, and the episode ends. She comes back in episode 8, gets really mad, gets tricked into being locked up, and becomes eye candy for the shipping mongrels right after her sister, Jinx, Powder, the one she was ready to eat bullets for, hinted at committing suicide. Nothing really happens to her in the last episode, she just gets her ass beat and gets big sad about Jinx, I guess. And that's it. Another complex character gone with the wind. But I'm not done. Anyone notice how nerfed she got this season? Not in that department, I'm talking about her fighting ability. She doesn't win a single fight in this season, despite having the gauntlets by her side for most of the time she's on screen. Keep in mind Season 2 starts right where Season 1 ended. Jinx has had no training as far as I know, and Vi is high off a win against an upgraded Shimmered Savika, learning about a new shield mechanic in the process. She should be able to handle herself against Jinx quite well, regardless of the differences in range, as Vi has found many ingenious ways of moving about her boxing ring via the gauntlets. If we take a look at this fight, she takes out Jinx's minigun at the start, and the rest of it takes place within her own range. Yet she's struggling? The gauntlets are shown to have no resistance nor added weight. Vi can fight with them just as fast, if not faster than she did without them. Jinx can wield gadgets and gizmos more than half her size and is a great shot, but without her utility belt, she's a sitting duck. The second Ekko closed the distance on her, she didn't stand a chance. Yet somehow she's giving Vi the two-piece combo with a side of biscuits, as if she underwent the same training Vi did in the small amount of time between now and the Season 1 finale. But Daura, don't you remember when she fixed up the training bot? Of course I do, which is how I also remember that she still couldn't beat Vi's score when she was still a kid. But she also has super speed because of the shimmer. Yeah, it made her faster, but not stronger or more durable. One good punch from the gauntlet should at least disorient her, as a smack to the face from one of Smeech's goons considered her good as theirs. But even if it didn't, the second Jinx's gun was destroyed, the fight should have ended. Not only here when the gemstones conveniently flooped, but here because Jinx's matchstick arm is broken, and here because her head is crushed. Another but less impactful fight I mentioned earlier happens 2 episodes later. Jinx provoked Vi into a fight and somehow wasn't taken out within the first 5 seconds. As for her other fights, she either isn't shown or she already lost. Looking back at it all, there isn't really much to talk about when it comes to Vi's contributions to the story. She got left in limbo as nothing but a puppet for Kate's dark side story and the glass-shattering screams from fanfic junkies. No thoughts on Jinx's rise, no meaningful interactions with Kate or Jayce, no build-up to her enforcer end-rolling or her eventual realization of Vander's fate, no final battle between sisters, nothing. All that potential, all those payoffs, once again, gone with the wind.
Professor!
Yes, of course!
Why are you breaking into my lab? And who's he?
This is my new pupil, Ekko. Ekko, my former pupil, Jayce.
Each of the characters you see in front of you are more useless than Vi. I swear I'm not joking. All 3 get flooped in the 3rd episode and never get so much as a frame until episode 5. For Jayce, Heimer and Ekko don't come back until episode 7. The creator of Hextech, his mentor, and the Firelight's commander, poof, all gone. The Hexgate failsafe flooped out, and they teleported to different timelines. Yeah, now we added time traveling to the mix, almost like it's a rite of passage for any shit piece of modern media.
I've had enough headaches.
I guess we'll start with Jayce, a brilliant inventor from House Talus, fueled on nothing but illegal equipment and a dream to control magic. At first, he was looked at as a madman, but with Victor's help, he was able to push Piltover forward in ways their inhabitants could never imagine. After the Hexgates, the question on everyone's minds was, what's next for Hextech? Thus, the birth of the Gemstone, a stable form of magic that can power whatever the wielder thinks of, whether for creation or destruction, and everyone wanted in. After it was stolen, Jayce was appointed as a member of the council to oversee the security of Hextech and, like Kate, get to the root of Piltover's corruption. With Topside kept in the dark on the reality of Zaun's growing power, the implementation of Hextech weaponry soon became the answer to the previous question. But it wasn't the creators' answer. All they wanted was to make the world a better place, to save lives. They couldn't bear to envision a world where their tech would be used for war, but that world kept creeping closer and closer as the days went by. Ambessa's meeting and Vi and Kate's report didn't help much to deter Jayce from getting ahead of the competition, although he was forced to do it on his own terms. After banding together with an unlikely ally, he traveled down to one of Silco's factories, downing every soldier without remorse, until in his havoc wreaking, a child got caught in the crossfire. He then was snapped out of his trance, shocked at the bleak future Hextech would bring to the people of Zaun. For his last act as a member of the council, he called for a deal with the snake, to ensure that no more blood is spilt between the nations, and in spite of the initial outrage, the unanimous decision was in his favor. We know what happened after that. A discussion surrounding the possibility of a war between Piltover and Zaun was being had with the living members, one of which, with the help of Ambessa, proposed that the enforcers flood Zaun with Hextech.
How many more counselors have to be blown to pieces before you finally wake up? We are under siege!
Officer Kiraman witnessed the attack firsthand. She confirmed this was the act of a single deranged individual. Silco is dead, the underground leaderless. If we follow your plan, we risk unifying them against us. We use a division against them. Pin the attack on Jinx, post a reward too substantial to ignore.
I'm not comfortable trusting our fates to chance. Jinx has proven elusive. Our healing can only begin once she's been brought to justice.
Then it's settled. 2-1. We invade.
Mr. Ginkgo Nut Man, with all due respect, who the hell put you in charge? Not a single person, not a one in this room, had anything to do with Hextech. Yes, they were partners, but doesn't anyone, Jayce's SO and best friend, I'm looking at you two, doesn't anyone think that Jayce should be the ultimate decider in whether or not his invention gets used to potentially kill innocent civilians? But Dara, Jayce, and even you said so yourself. That act in the finale was his final act as counselor, because he assumed they would have banished him for it.
My days here are numbered, but I've come with Victor, my partner, and a Zaunite, with one final proposal.
He said nothing about leaving on his own, and even if he did, he couldn't carry out the act anyway. Silco backed out of the deal, and the council got blown up before any officiating could officially officiate. But for the sake of argument, let's say he lost his counselor status on a technicality. Do you seriously think that Jayce's word would carry no weight solely because he wasn't a counselor anymore? He's the only one not dead or in a coma who can create the gemstones. Whether he was a council member or not, they need him to carry out their invasion. Sure, Mel stopped the usage of Hextech, for now, but it's still odd how nobody neither waited nor sent for Jayce to get his opinion. But the funniest thing about that is, he probably would have let him do it.
I asked her to put on the uniform. Suffice to say, she declined. She thinks those gauntlets of yours will solve all her problems.
What if she's right?
What? My mother's entered the game. She's already gotten her hooks into Sallow, using his grief to make a play for Hextech.
Mel, I promised Victor. Never again.
How many times do I have to keep bringing up that this is all happening right after the end of Season 1? Why did Kate have to be the one to bring him back to reality?
Hextech may keep us alive, Jayce, but it's not what will save us.
He shouldn't even be thinking this, let alone actually saying it. It goes against what happened in Episode 8, his friend's dying wish, and what he just said to Mel the scene prior. Well, that was quick. No conversations, no discussions, 2 attacks did him in. Anyway, in the next episode, Heimerdinger and Ekko make their way back to Jayce's lab to get information on what's happening with the dying tree in the Firelight's hideout. For some reason, when noting that he's seen the leaf's ailment before, Heimer doesn't immediately become fearful of what he predicted coming to pass. Forget about all that, just laugh at the funny mustache man. Look at him roll around and act like an idiot for our amusement. Heimer and Jayce meet again, exchanging a sample of the dying tree, and they never talk about Heimer's forced retirement. Remember that? Jayce's ultimate betrayal against who he considered his mentor? Never gets referenced, no endgame style talking to, no bad blood or resentment. It was like it never happened. I'm sure you guys are noticing the theme here. In the episode after, yes, the episode after, because Jinx takes up most of the second episode, Jayce and Ekko begin discussing the differences between rune types, trying to pinpoint how the ailment is affecting different areas.
Pass me a tome. So I used words you understood in order to elicit your action. This is what Hextech runes are. Pass me a tome. Pass me a tome. There, you sighed. Still a kind of language. A sound, but not words. Something raw, natural. That's wild runes. Most places the arcane is dormant, but here and there, it's more active, and wild runes are...
Sort of like its fingerprints. So you're telling me that pattern is on my tree because you pissed the arcane off with all your demands?
What?
Oh, the lad may be onto something. I've seen miracles spring from the hands of mages many times. So often they turn to horrors. I'd always presumed it was due to mankind's turbulent relationship with power. But perhaps it is a property of the arcane itself.
We tested our Hextech under every conceivable condition for years. If there's some reaction taking place, how come we've never seen any sign of it until now?
Excellent question, Jayce. Very nice. Let's see what the writers answer with.
Deep under.
It's almost like these new rules only made to facilitate this wet napkin of a story instantly break everything from before now and here on the second they give you time to think about it. So let's think about it. The arcane used to be simple, an unstable force that can save or kill those in its wake depending on the intentions of the individual it was bestowed upon. Hextech was simply a means to stabilize it and give it to the people. But now, with the creation of the gemstones, the arcane's relationship with morality was further emphasized, as now anyone had the chance to wield its power. Thanks to the show focusing more on Hextech over pure magic itself, the writers could put more energy towards its consequences on the story, over having to dedicate large segments of runtime explaining a bunch of rules and guidelines to keep their concept of magic grounded enough to create believable stakes. Until it all got thrown out of the window in favor of the classic multiverse conflict generator. The "it doesn't matter what good you do, you and your universe are screwed either way" cop-out. Even though the destruction brought upon the world by magic was clearly described as a result of the wielder's obsession with power,
I've seen this power in the wrong hands. It corrupts, consumes, lays waste to civilizations. Victor, something's different. You've changed. What did you do?
in this season, now all use of magic is bad. So that means Mel, Victor, Time Traveler Victor, the Black Rose, shit, count the first season versions of Vi and Jayce, all dead or inconvenienced from pissing off the Arcane. And yet, none of them or Victor's disciples suffer any side effects after the first and only floopening that affected the gemstones. It's funny how that works. Anyway, as all of this magic talk is going on, Heimer is busy being the Olaf of the series going, "Aw, fiddlesticks," when he should be the one with a fire under his ass helming the conversation as, well, you know, the thing he predicted would happen with magic tampering is happening as they speak. Anyone remember when Heimerdinger vehemently opposed magic in all forms because of how much damage it's caused throughout the hundreds of years he's lived? Remember the pain and fear in his eyes when he saw the Hex Core? How adamant he was about destroying it, even though it might have been the key to curing his previous pupil of his sickness? Nah, me neither. As they investigate, the failsafe floops them and Ekko out, and they're not to be seen again until the writers remember that they just flooped out 3 of their most critical characters. Fast forward to the end of episode 5, Jayce floops back as Jayce with an all-new flimflammer and plot-dependent headaches, and doesn't show up again until there's a kid to be slaughtered in the second half of the next episode before killing Victor. In the episode after, he plays second fiddle to Miles's Ekko's part of the episode, as him getting shown suffering through Piltover and Zaun's floopture after Hextech merely served as an explanation to his absence. We fast forward again to episode 8, where he returned to the council headroom right as Mel did. How convenient, and came to a near-level conclusion that Mel was the reason he was still alive. He then proceeded to call her out for manipulating him before, surprise! Faceless Hivemind Goon number 1 enters the fight. Jayce gets his ass kicked because the goon exploited his previously established weakness of not being able to deal with fast enemies. Also, screw you, Victor, for giving him such a garbage weapon to deal with these things. Look at how much effort it took to beat just one. Imagine if he had to fight an entire army of them at the same time. Mel saves him and he blows up the goon. In the next In the next episode, he gets his ass beat again, has his backstory ruined by Victor, becomes another prop for the Twitter tyrants, and dies. Heimerdinger and Ekko also got flooped into the future, but into a future where Zahn and Piltover were brought together. Ekko takes a trip down memory lane, throwing fan service to the audience. He, Heimer, and Powder just straight up build a time machine. Ekko and Powder dance, and after Heimer implements some modifications to send them back to their timeline, he fucking dies. Yeah, after yelling ball sockets and singing a song, he just dies, and Ekko gets sent back to episode 9, where he, instead of her sister, saves Jinx from suicide and spams his ult until he finishes the job on Victor. God damn. What can I even say at this point? Jayce's beliefs and his promise to Victor, Heimerdinger's intelligence and apprehension to magic, Ekko's dominance and leadership, all shrunk down to a footnote in a story they used to command so much presence in. They barely have any comments on what's going on in the present, they never had a chance to bond or discuss past grievances, Heimer never got the chance to mentor Ekko or reconcile with Jayce. Even though the Firelights should be rallying together after Silco's death, they barely get any screen time, let alone enough screen time to have Ekko lead an uprising. Ekko and Jayce didn't represent the possibility of Piltover and Zahn's brightest minds fighting towards a common goal. We don't even get an episode where they all have to cast their differences aside and put their brains together to escape the floopture, you know, because they're all inventors with different backgrounds, leaving them open for character progression and bonding, and save the past after finding out the truth. We didn't get anything. Nada. Zilch. Nothing. Why, I ask? Why would you throw away such great characters? Why throw away the chance for them to become greater? It's all so abrupt, so blatant, so jarring. What happened during those 3 years between then and now? Why put this garbage out if you were going to ruin them this badly? I don't understand. I just don't understand any of it. So that's our heroes, the more important ones anyway. What about the villains? Just let me get this pile of manipulative totally important and not at all emotionally manipulative plot device. Adorable and lovable sidekick whose sole purpose is to give Jinx a reason to live and to wipe her crimes from public memory. Long story short, this little shit is everything wrong with modern day writing. A sugar-coated safety net covered in rainbow sprinkles made to distract the audience from whatever the writers want them to forget about. In Arcane's case, Jinx's crimes. She has no dialogue, she undergoes no character arc, lacks an iota of motivation, which all mean that she has nothing to show for in terms of a personality, as she just mimics whatever Jinx does. She only exists to tell the audience how they should feel about certain situations and nothing more. Kate almost shot a kid? She's an evil person. Oh my god, guys, look at how good a parent Jinx is. Oh no, Jinx's voices returned when the plot device got captured. Look guys, she's not a psychopathic serial murderer because she cares so much for the plot device. Look at her cry when Jinx is in danger. Look guys, she's not a psychopathic serial murderer because the plot device cares so much for Jinx. All she really wanted was a friend, and now that she's gone, she has nothing to live for. Isn't that sad? You guys feel bad for her yet? Huh? You guys forget about Jinx's body count yet? Look at how deep their bond is, you guys. Isha isn't the first example, but she's definitely a contender for the most blatant and frustrating. Moving on to an actual character, Ambessa only appeared for 2 episodes and had close to no screen time, yet in one flashback and a couple of sentences, she became shrouded in intrigue, a war general haunted with deaths caused by inaction. Even if it meant the banishing of her daughter to silence her conscience, or taking part in a preventable war to obtain the firepower needed to stand a chance against her son's murderer, she would do and sacrifice anything to protect her family. And with what she foresaw coming true, a villain spot waiting to be filled, and an orphan in need of a mother that knows best, Ambessa had the opportunity to be a Silco-level villain, but in a new way. With her hands on the wheel slowly steering the ship towards the prevention of chaos and the daughter she always wanted at her side, doing wrong for the right reasons seems to be a shaken Piltover's only path for progress. So, Anyone want to guess how much of that made it to the final product? If you've kept up so far, you can already guess that Ambessa had little presence, despite the show yelling at us that she's the puppet master who orchestrates every event and is always 2 steps ahead. She talks a good game, but she doesn't really plan anything, aside from the ruse in the first episode. You could consider her manipulating Kate to be part of it as well, but it took Vi no effort to snap her out of Ambessa's conditioning, so that didn't matter much either. She had Vi, a person she said caused too many complications, dead to rights, but she let her talk for some reason. Like her whole motivation for banishing who she would have given the world to wasn't the fact that she'd never let her inaction cause future deaths. Did the same for Kate in the finale. It's as if all they saw her as was a walking book of badass quotes. She just lets things happen and Thrawn copes her way into thinking it was a part of her plan all along. To back up my claim, let me talk about the time when it was actually a part of her plan all along. In episode 3, we find out that Ambessa was the one behind the attack at the memorial. She's made it perfectly clear that she has her eyes set on Hextech weaponry to defend herself and her family from the order that killed her son, the Black Rose. This is further substantiated by her conversation with Rictus after their failed experiment.
This is their doing.
We can't be certain the Black...
Keep their name out of your mouth!
We can't be certain the Order was also behind the disappearance of Jayce and Heimerdinger.
Who else? The moment we seize control of this backwater, everyone with an inkling of talent vanishes. Our instincts were right. They fear Hextech, but we were too slow. How could I not secure the scientists?
So if this was your main goal, then why would you make a deal to launch an attack that would put Jayce, the only one not dead or in a coma that can create gemstones, in danger of death or maiming by nonsensical triple chainsaw from a chem baron whose son died by his hand? The only reason why her idiot planning gained any result was because Jayce's spine is made out of adamantium. Otherwise, her journey towards her vision for Hextech stops dead in its tracks. Yet the show has the audacity to pass this off like it was a smart move and that they did such a clever job hiding it. Gasp! The woman who was willing to spark a war to gain the power to defend herself, sparked a war to gain the power to defend herself. You filthy traitor! It never once felt like she was in the background plotting like Silco. We had to constantly be told through dialogue that she's got something big brewing in the back, instead of seeing hints of her plan unravel through actions and reactions little by little. And if I'm being honest, she didn't have to be written that way in the first place. There was no reason for her to hide in the shadows because her values already lined up with the direction Piltover was heading in. She should have been in the foreground, hiding in plain sight, a fox among the wolves, using the uncertainty of the broken council, Kate's grief, and Piltover's fear as the wind to her sails. But to be a broken record, we didn't get any of that. Not even a glimpse. What a waste of a setup for what could have been another memorable villain. But hers wasn't the only one. An aspiring engineer held back by misfires. A young girl hell-bent on proving herself useful in spite of her scraggly stature and inability to duke it out with the rest. After a treasure trove of past failures granting her the curse of the Jinx, against her supportive sister's orders to stay away, she took her newfound component to the warehouse holding Vander. Unbeknownst to their escape plan going extremely well, Powder sent her first working weapon marching towards her friends and enemies, symbol clashing explosion after explosion, with each clash worse than the last. But all she knew was that her invention finally worked. She was free of the Jinx name. She arrived at the scene, buzzing with thoughts about how happy Vi and the gang will be when they find out who saved the day. Reality was setting in. The euphoria was dissipating. The name that cut deep then created an exit wound, and in an anguished attempt to pour her heart out and plead for her hero not to give up on her, she was abandoned and taken in by a victim of the same wound. She then became an associate to Silco's plans to free Zaun, but fell short due to a never-ending battle with the cries of her past, which get further exacerbated by the news of her sister rising from the ashes. Stuck between pleasing the man who took care of her and answering the voices in her head, her psyche starts falling apart. Does Silco still care for her? Why would he lie about her sister if that were the case? Would Vi accept who she is, or is that Enforcer girl the one who took her place? Who am I to these people? Or better yet, who am I to me? So to get the answers to these burning questions, she took it upon herself to call for a sit-down. Drowning in conflicting thoughts from those closest to her fractured heart, the dilemma comes to a peak, and at its eruption, a life was taken. In his final moments, Silco stayed true to his word and accepted her for who she became, willing to sacrifice all that he worked for to keep her free from life in a cell. She knew what she had to do next. Powder died along with half the council that day, and only time would tell what Jinx would do next, now in Silco's place as the one to lead Zaun to independency. Apparently, she has no reason to live anymore, wandering the lanes aimlessly, looking for chaos and watching it all burn. Yeah, I guess she spent all that time making fish bones to just shoot it on the council and not want to take the lead on conquering Piltover? Way to make her first act as Jinx so vapid. Way to make her so helpless without Silco. Gone are the days of pure, cruel innocence, a twisted sense of humor, and risk of violence at the sound of a pin drop. Her raspy voice onset by years of pain, childlike mannerisms and gumshoe phrases.
Savika will clean it up. Savika's a regular Johnny on the spot.
Chuck!
Theorem. My name's Theorem.
Nice try, Chuck. You're doing great, Chuck. Here, for your troubles. 10 out of 10, tits.
Thrown out for yet another copy and paste Harley Quinn job. Jinx's adorable design, juxtaposed with who she is and what she does, especially after what we know about her backstory, made her such a difficult character to root against, and made her actions look all the more psychotic and unpredictable. But who needs all that when a big fat hero is here? Now the writers want Jinx to be a don't care about anybody, MCU quippin', perky, quirky anti-hero, and her sudden apathy plays a huge part in that. Because the plot device has to give her a reason to fight for a greater cause and to care for somebody other than herself, and they lay it on thick.
The whole Undercity's buzzing, saying you're back. So I'm thinking...
Not your strong suit.
Would make a world of difference if you showed up. You're a symbol. Silco spent his whole life trying to rally the Undercity together. Stupid joke that it is. You have the chance to pull it off.
Get her out!
You really are a
big fat hero.
Oh!
Arrested?
She saved your life. If you will just calm down for one...
Even knowing you'd never have done the same for her.
The only thing Jinx cared about was getting you to safety. Then she just surrendered. She's being held in the bunker while I decide what to do.
Kate, she's changed.
We can't erase our mistakes. None of us.
Who decides who gets a second chance?
That's ridiculous.
It's funny how they're making Kate out to be the bad guy, and she's completely right.
If you're here to kill me, make sure to finish the job.
Vi thinks you've changed.
She can't accept what you and I know. There are no happy endings.
Miss Brandt?
Yes?
Get me a violin.
There won't be a trial. I'm giving you this one chance to account for your actions. All the pain you've caused. No amount of good deeds can undo our crimes.
Do what you came here to do.
Hating you, I've hated myself. I just don't have the energy for it any longer.
I didn't know your mom was there.
What?
It probably wouldn't have made a difference, but I didn't know.
Is something wrong, Yosuke?
Very wrong!
You're wrong, Jinx. It wouldn't have made a difference. If anything, it might have further motivated you. After all, you hated Kate's guts because you thought that she was your replacement. But even if we were to be morally abhorrent and say that it would've, you still killed half the council, and many others before then. And don't even get me started on those she almost killed. Do the writers not realize how disgusting this is? To think that all the children she orphaned and took pleasure in doing?
Never thought my sister would turn bluebelly.
Never thought mine would orphan kids.
Why not?
Just wash away because at her lowest point caused by her own actions she asks for forgiveness? It's not like with all the manipulative events she did anything inherently selfless. The plot device did more for Zaun than Jinx ever did. All she did was be a symbol, nothing of her own accord. Victor being the bigger threat, however juvenile it was written, was what forced Piltover and Zaun to stand together. And the things that she did do until smack at the end after being convinced by Ekko to not commit suicide only revolved around the plot device and her sister. So your own writing, even with all these cheat codes, still doesn't support the batshit crazy narrative you're trying to portray. Shoving in a mute, wide-eyed awe factory and forcing events to revolve around giving Jinx hero points will not erase the fact that she's a serial murderer. In turn, her character just fell flat. I didn't feel anything about her throughout the season, and I chuckled when she died because the show is practically on its knees begging for me to care. But I couldn't. I tried my damnedest to get back in and immerse myself, fool myself into thinking I wanted good guy Jinx and see how I felt about it, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. And the same can be said for the show as a whole. Although, there was one villain kindling the fire before it died out, and while it won't take me too long to talk about it, it's something I wanted to save till last, as it made up a big chunk of my hype for this season. Now, I didn't play League for long, PC League that is, but for the small amount of time that I did, and a huge mist filled with waifus, 16-pack hunks, and subjects filed under questionable, one legend caught my eye. Forever driven by the smell of blood on the battlefield, filled with fury ready to be unleashed, but only at the proper time. League wasn't a fun game, but Warwick helped make it so, and upon the teasing heard from around the internet and the first look clip early last year, I could only imagine how Warwick's already ferocious look would be done justice by Arcane's animators. How will his place in the story as a revived Vander unfold? With so many characters lost and my dreams dashed, I held out hope that Warwick would at least please my caveman brain with a badass entrance. But nope, couldn't even have that. Warwick's intro was a disappointment to say the least. It started off fine, but then it started losing me when the fight would constantly slow down before any fighting would occur on screen. This is a problem that plagues most of the fight scenes in this season. Not to mention they wouldn't stop cutting to the plot device mid-fight to show the audience how closely she bonded with Jinx. We get it, you want people to understand how heroic Jinx is. Now get back to what we came here for. Oh wait, it's over now. Not even a couple minutes in and we already got hints of Vander still being inside. He comes back in the next episode, and now that Vi and Jinx are searching for him together, that fire was beginning to burn again. I hate that they phoned it in with the spamming of his POV, but the fight between him and Vi was closing in. The student and her teacher lost to experimentation, using what they learned to fight to the death. And just like that, in 55 seconds made even shorter due to the aforementioned glorified slideshow problem, the fight was over and his programming was undone a half-minute later. After that, his reprogramming fails by Jayce's hand, and he finishes the season off being a juiced-up hive mind goon. You wonder why he was in the story at all. I mean, you had Vander, a man who gave up his freedom to be jailed in order to keep the peace between the nations and keep his children safe, forced to walk the earth as a cold-blooded killer with the sole purpose to tear apart whatever stood in its way. That dichotomy alone... Armin! I'm done, man. Let's just wrap this up. Remember Mel? Remember how crucial she was to Hextech's success? Remember that her investment into Jayce was an educated risk, entangled in a web of her own making? Remember the question of what her presence would graduate to now that her mother entered the scene? The writers certainly didn't. After the explosion, they hinted at a future conflict with Jayce confronting Mel on how he was left unscathed, but whoops! She gets kidnapped by the Black Rose to be tested, escapes by means of magical bullshit powers, joins the Black Rose, fights a hive mind goon with Jayce, has a talk with Ambessa that should have been built up to over the season, becomes completely useless in her fight with Kate because of Ambessa's magical charm bracelet, betrays the Black Rose for... reasons, and takes Ambessa's place, I guess? Remember Victor, the Undercity-born prodigy scientist met with the unfortunate fate of death by mystery illness? The guy who killed Best Girl in his obsession with curing himself to help his people in the days to come? And because of that, he wanted the Hex Core to be destroyed and accepted his fate? The writers certainly didn't. After getting rezzed, he wandered around and healed people for a clip or two, and didn't make another major appearance until episode 6. Then went through a season's worth of progression into Ultron despite the truth he came to accept in the previous season for... reasons. Bars. Ah, Savika. Silco's right-hand man. Downgraded from badass bodyguard to helpless goon. Had one terrible fight scene and a couple of lines. No conflict with her finding out that Jinx killed her boss. Borderline inconsequential to the story. Mr. Ginkgo Nugman looked to have a future conflict with Kate being chosen by Ambessa instead of him, but got turned into a pile of mashed potatoes instead. Shield Guy should have been another lead character, especially with the way they were introducing him. Shoot, imagine if the threat that Ambessa feared was Darius. Maddie is nothing but a reaction farm, Smeech and Rictus were kinda cool, then they died, and Singed, funnily enough, created Warwick, revived Victor, and because of those actions, killed a lot of people and almost played a part in the genocide of the people of Runeterra, yet he's the one who got everything he ever wanted. It cannot get any more ironic than that. So, what would I have done differently? Kill Victor. Off top. His villain arc doesn't make much sense since, like I said before, he's in his acceptance phase. Plus, there would be no reason to screw up the gemstones. Jayce can be further planted in his stance for peace. calling for more interactions with Vi, working in tandem trying to keep Kate from losing control, and also coinciding his views with Mel's conquest against Ambessa. Act 1 would be the entirety of the second season. No Floopture, no Black Rose BS, no alternate timelines. Just a gradual rise to Zon and Piltover's war. This allows us to give both sides a reset, with more time to grow new relationships and start world building post the attack. I'd also put the Vi and Jinx fight at the end of the season, to give Jinx time to develop a game plan against Vi's clear advantage, Iron Man Cap style. Maybe they'd get into an early scuffle with some lines on their present selves to catch up, but nothing too huge until core characters' lives can be lost. No sidekicks, just Vi and Jinx battling for their nations. And through Jinx's death after a prompt for an arrest and the overthrowing of Ambessa's warmongering empire, Runeterra can finally heal. It's really rough and barely scratches the surface on the details, but the point I'm trying to get across with this is that Arcane needed to stay grounded, more focused. If I wanted to make that stick, I'd even cut 2 or 3 episodes. Everyone's past halfway to the ends of their arcs, and a war is inevitable. I think 9 would just be dragging it all out. To be cynical, the first season could have stood on its own, but if you kept it all down to what you've built up before and added some new characters here and there to keep the world from feeling small, then you would have been golden. But just like how it was with my Walking Dead video, no amount of headcanon will change what we've gotten. Goodbye, Arcane. You unfortunately ended up being the student who shined the brightest. And to those of you who made it this far into my venting session, I know there are plenty of other creators out there much more qualified than me to analyze media that have pretty much done this topic to death, so whether you enjoyed the video or scolded me for my terrible takes, thanks for thinking of me. As for my investment in Arcane's future, considering the we'll get him next time attitude after releasing what obviously had no business being made, and the response the creator gave the people that rightfully called them out for botching the job so spectacularly, I couldn't care less about the great they're pursuing when they failed to do the good they promised us. Thank you all for watching, don't be a jinx, and have a spectacular rest of your day.